To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Hey, I'm Garrett Gunn. You might know me from Good Boy, Warcorns, Franklin and Ghost, and you're watching The Experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. It is Thursday. We are at the end of our week, not yours, of course, because you still have a Friday to get through. But we'll be wrapping up this week with a talk about the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett. How are we already at the season finale? It seemed like it just started. But then again, it seemed like it was just Christmas. Didn't it? Where'd this 6 weeks go? Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just flown by, or 7 weeks, I guess. But before we get into that, I do want to address one bit of news, a casting news that Russell Crowe, who is going to appear in Thor Love and Thunder, is going to be joining another Marvel movie, but this one of the Sony universe ones, and he's going to play in Kraven the Hunter. Yep. So Aaron Taylor Johnson, we know, is playing Kraven, but Russell Crowe is joining, and he's supposed to be worded. I mean, no definite on what his casting is, but the rumors is that he's going to be kind of part of the lineage of Kraven's. So maybe he's Kraven's father. Which case they might bring in his brother, who is the Chameleon. That would be interesting. But the other possibility, and I don't know if they would go this route, but it could be very interesting, is there is a Kraven story where he creates a bunch of clones of himself, I think it is, trains them all to be hunters, and then basically unleashes them onto the world to hunt and to prove themselves. And one of them decides to hunt the others. And eventually it comes down to that one takes out all the clones and then goes after the main Kraven himself. Now, I could see them doing that with Aaron Taylor Johnson being the clone and Russell Crowe being the original. That could be a very interesting story, because you think of Kraven, most people immediately go to Kraven's Last Hunt. You know, that's the biggie. You're going to go to, you know, the death of Spider-Man. He takes over the suit. And I don't think you can do that, especially if you don't have a Spider-Man in that universe. Now, they could have him pop over, stuff like that, but Kraven's Last Hunt almost seems like they need to set Kraven up a little bit more and establish a Spider-Man in the universe. So maybe they do the clone story. Maybe they do the story where he's, you know, his offspring, or they change it so it's not clones, it's his children. Just something to shake it up a bit. Because, like I said, there aren't that many Kraven stories where, you know, you could do a movie based off of. That could be an interesting choice. But Russell Crowe joining the cast of Kraven the Hunter. Hoping we'll find out more about that soon. Because nowadays, these things fly so quickly. I mean, just, it's announced, it's in production, it's in post-production, we're getting a trailer. It just seems to go that fast. Even with the pandemic slowing everything down, we still are getting some of these things that quickly. I mean, how long have we been getting trailers for the Batman? Even though it got postponed, we've had trailers now for, what, a year and a half? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that, what they're going to do with Craven, and how Russell Crowe plays into it. But I don't think you cast Russell Crowe for a bit part. He's got to be somebody of importance. Or you don't bother casting Russell Crowe. He's sure maybe he does it as a funsy thing, like with Thor: Love and Thunder, because I don't think he's going to be around long. I think he's supposed to be playing Zeus. My dream casting for him, though, would have been like the gardener from the Elders of the Universe, because I really wanted a scene with all of the Elders in the universe together, like meeting up and talking about all the BS that these Marvel characters have done to them, these different heroes. And then that's when Gore the God Butcher shows up and starts taking out the Elders. So you got Jeff Goldblum trying to run away, and Benicio del Toro, and then Russell Crowe and Kurt Russell, because they consider Ego an Elder of the Universe now. So I think that would be a lot of fun to have all the different Elders and have Gore the God Butcher take on them, because I think that would show a certain level of power for him and be a good introduction. But guess we won't see that. Bummer, huh? Be fun, though, to see Goldblum running, Ah! All right. Let's get on to our main topic of the day, the Book of Boba Fett. And we do have a lot to talk about here. So let's kick this off with a spoiler warning. JD should be able to hook us up with that. All right. We are definitely going to spoil some stuff here, because there's no way to talk about that finale without spoiling. Now, going into the episode, I had heard the same thing, from I listen online and I do the chats and stuff like that, and I watch other people's shows and stuff. Oh man, father of Craven, father of Superman, Crow gets around. Yes. So the big thing, a lot of people, and it happens with every Disney Plus show, they come along and they say, oh, there's just too much left to do in an hour of television. This will have to be a double-sized episode, or it'll have to go extra long, and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it never does. And then there's always these big, grandiose fan theories of going into it, like, oh, Luke Skywalker's going to show up and he's going to fight with Boba Fett. Why would he fight with Boba Fett? At no point did Boba Fett and he seem to be friends, and he really doesn't have that good of rapport with Din Djarin that he's going to go, I will fight with you. He just picked up the baby and left. Mind you, he killed a bunch of Death Troopers because he needed the workout. But so I didn't see that seemed like a really bizarre one. Oh, the twins are going to come back. No, the twins left, I mean, basically it was all these, oh, we're going to get a de-aged Han Solo. You mean you're going to get Harrison Ford, who said he never wants to come back and only came back for the last movies because they killed his character, is going to come back and do the de-aging thing for a cameo? Really? My favorite was, I heard one guy complaining that the post-credit scene was a waste, and then he laid out what his post-credit scene would have been. And he was very specific about it, too. He said the post-credit scene should have been Luke meditating where he had been with Grogu, and then the Millennium Falcon lands in the background, and then a de-aged Han and Leia show up with a young Ben Solo, bringing him to the academy for the first time to become the first student. And I'm thinking, why? This is the Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people are split on this. This is a very diverse series. And I think it's because a lot of people have their idea of what they think Boba Fett should be. Now, I don't know if it's from having watched the Clone Wars where he's a kid, or having read Legends, the books and stuff, which are no longer canon, or if it's just the 2.5 minutes of screen time that he had in Empire and Return of the Jedi solidified his character for these people. It just seems that a lot of people are upset because Boba Fett wasn't who they wanted him to be. Now, if you go back to the creation of Boba Fett, he was basically a riff on Clint Eastwood's character from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He was the man with no name. That was his thing. That's what he was. He had the spurs. The cape was supposed to be like the poncho. That's where Lucas got the idea, which makes even more sense that when they created Cad Bane, they based him off of Lee Van Cleef's character from the same movie. That's why he's got the big wide brim hat and the silhouette that he has. He's supposed to be the Lee Van Cleef character. So a showdown between these two has always been inevitable. And in the Clone Wars, there was an episode that they wrote, they did the animatics on, but it never ended up being filmed. But they showed the animatics in the story at D23 or Star Wars, the big Star Wars show one time. And now everybody kind of considers it canon. And we find out that through Clone Wars, we know that Cad Bane trained Boba some when he was a kid. And that's because Cad Bane apprenticed with Jango Fett. So there was a kind of a connection there. But this animatic that they put out showed a final showdown between Boba Fett and Cad Bane. And they both shot at the same time. Bane got hit in the head. And you'll notice that when he has his hat off, there's a metal plate on his head. That's from that. And Boba got hit, and the ding in his helmet is from that moment. Now, that was never officially put into the show, so it's not officially canon, but they give enough nods to it that most fans kind of still expect it to be, which is fine. But I think the problem is that there's a lot of people setting their expectations based on their desires, on what they want things to be. They don't go in going, oh, I hope it's a good show. Oh, I hope we get some answers. Okay, let's take a look at what going into episode 7 we found out. We found out specifically how Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc pit. That's something that's been speculated for years. Patton Oswalt's rant about it. We found out what happened, how his armor went from being on him in the Sarlacc pit to being on the Jawa sandcrawler where Cobb Vanth gets it. We found out how he survived on the planet for a while, why he rescued Fennec Shand, why she got modified instead of healed. You know, he didn't put her in a Bacta tank. He took her to someone to modify her. We got all these kind of questions or answers, you know, plus we had answers to things that were left over from the Mandalorian. We found out what ship's Din Djarin's going to get now that the Razor Crest was exploded. What's his new mission? Well, his new mission now is to restore his place in his Mandalorian sect by bathing in the waters under Mandalore, under the mines of Mandalore. Well, he kind of needs to take the planet back. He's got the Darksaber. All seems to tie together. We find out the history of the Darksaber. We see the Night of 1,000 Tears. This is all happening in this show. We also get basically Boba Fett in a different way. The Boba Fett that climbed out of the Sarlacc pit had just gone through a huge trauma, loses his armor, and then gets put with this group of Tusken Raiders, or Tuskens. It changes him. He becomes part of a group. He becomes part of a tribe. And in doing so, he's changed. Now, everything he's doing, he's not coming into Tatooine. And in a sense, he's taking over Mos Eisley. He's taken over Mos Espa because he lost his tribe. He's trying to build a new tribe with the people there. Now, he could have just rolled into the palace, taken over, never left, sent out commands, and that would be it. And then if the Pike wanted to take him out, he could have made a deal with the Pike to keep the stuff flowing. There was a lot of things he could have done if he just wanted to be a crime lord. But he doesn't. He wants to be a tribe leader. The daimyo. So that's why his actions are very different than what the Jabba the Hutt would do or Bib Fortuna would do. His whole thing was to lead through respect, and that's because he not only wanted to get respect, he wanted to show respect, and that's why he didn't get carried around on a litter. It's why he walked. That's why he did the things he did. He released Black Chrysanthemum after the fight, when the twins gave up on him. He did, he hired the Mod Gang. Now, look, I'm not a huge fan of the Mod Gang. I think their look doesn't fit for a city on Tatooine. They could have spent a little more time explaining them. Maybe that they're from Coruscant and they got moved here because of work or something or other. They could have given, but they didn't. And you know what? If that's the biggest complaint you have is that the mods just don't look like they fit, okay. But we got so much stuff. And then we got an entire episode that was, it was almost Grogu training with Luke Skywalker, except he wasn't really training him. He was re-showing him. It was like a refresher course. It's like you took a math class in high school, you did well in it, and then you're off to college and you're supposed to move on. You're like, well, let me take this math class again real quick just to get it back in my brain. That's pretty much what Luke was doing, because you got to remember, Grogu is 50 plus years old. We don't know how long he was at the temple training, but he's got probably decades and decades of training. So when he does stuff like, lift the mud horn or calm the rancor, those are things he already knows how to do. He's just still young, so his use of the Force takes a lot out of him. So, yeah, you gotta give it a little break, A lot of people were thrashing on this show. Now, there are problems with this show. The fact that we go 4 episodes, jumping back and forth between flashbacks and modern day, and there's very little modern day. It's mostly flashbacks. And then we get to the end of the flashbacks, and then we go to 2 episodes without the main character in it. And the simple solution for that would have been called the series The Battle for Tatooine, or The Battle for Mos Espa. And I don't think anybody would complain. But the fact that it's a Book of Boba Fett series, people want Boba Fett to be the thing. Well, there is a big growth arc for Boba Fett. It's just a lot of it is shown through flashbacks, and then the rest of it is shown in the finale as we see him making decisions that go against his better nature, or against his normal training, or what he would normally do. There's the moment in the episode where they're in Sanctuary and it's all blown to hell. And yes, it's obvious Madame Garza Fwip is gone. So pour one out for Jennifer Beals' character. But it's okay. Max Rebo had the night off. He was not in Sanctuary when it blew up. So Max Rebo still lives. We're good. But when they're standing there in Sanctuary and Boba says, we will fall back to the palace and set up there. And the mods were like, no, we're staying. We need to be here to protect the people. That got through to Boba because the tactical bounty hunter that he is knows the best move is to go back to the palace. That is the most secure location. You've got Slave One there, or whatever we're calling it now, the fire spray gunship. You've also got Din's new starfighter. You've got other things there. You probably have weapons there and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure there's some defenses for the palace. So it is a better defensible position. And you got a Rancor. But that doesn't move Boba forward with what he wants to do for the people, that he wants to bring them all together. Now, he doesn't come out and say it. You got to kind of read between the lines on this. But that's the move that is why at the end, when he's walking around, they're all bowing to him and giving fruit and stuff. It's not because he defeated the Pike. It's because he stood up for the city. Had he done it at his palace, I don't think any of them would have respected that. The fact that he stayed there in the city and fought off the Pike, drove the Spice Runners out, and took on Cad Bane and rode a freaking Rancor and did all of that and brought together these diverse groups of city folks and whatever the Freetown people are called, and a Wookiee and another Mandalorian, and he pulled these groups together, which showed that he was a leader. So had he gone back to the palace, it would have been the tactical right decision, but it wouldn't have been the wise decision for the growth Boba is trying to have, for him to basically turn Mos Espa into his tribe. Which is funny because at the very end, he's like, I don't think we're the right people for this. And it's like, well, who else? He kind of made himself that because he was trying to build this tribe. He never thought about having to be the one to lead it. Being a crime lord and being the head of a city are very different. Being a crime lord, you just go, give me the money or I kill you. You got to pay protection. You got to do this. Actually, leading the people, you've got to worry about the smaller details. Does everybody have enough food? Does everybody have work? Is the economy going well? Is there enough water? Is the price of water too high? These are all things that Boba Fett is now going to have to take into consideration. And there's a good chance that part of the reason that the person in the Bacta tank at the end is in the Bacta tank is because Boba knows that he's going to need someone who stays on the planet even if he needs to leave for a while. He needs a right-hand man. Now, Fennec is a great assassin, and I think he's going to take her wherever he goes. But if, he's got to go somewhere, like, for instance, in Mandalorian Season 3, if he ends up deciding to help Mando retake Mandalore, he's got to leave someone in his stead. Well, who better than Cobb Vanth? The marshal that took care of Freetown, just move him up to the marshal of Mos Espa, and if you modify him a bit with maybe a faster draw arm, stuff like that, could be interesting. All right. So we're kind of all over the place with this, but my main thing was, if you're looking at these episodes based on what it is that you wanted to see, what you thought Boba was supposed to be, how you thought the baby Grogu's story was supposed to end or move forward, what's going on with Mando, then you're not watching what they're giving you. You're watching to see if they're reading your mind. And if it's your loss, because if you're getting upset because they didn't tell the story you wanted them to tell, then you're missing out on the story they did tell. Now, it had flaws. Again, the whole thing with Boba Fett disappearing for 2 episodes, that is very weird for a series called Book of Boba Fett. And that one throws me off. It was very slow paced for the modern day story. The whole thing with the Tuskens went very well, including the train robbery, the train stopping, him training, the whole spirit walk thing. All of that was great. And if they're doing with Dances with Wolves, terrific. They would have done all that up front and then gotten to the rest of the stuff. But they were trying to do multiple stories here. They were trying to do a Western and The Godfather at the same time, which is a tough sell. And I think they needed a little more time in the modern day to set up and sell the Godfather story. They needed some more moments of the Pike or whoever we were supposed to think was the bad guy doing bad things, because we really only get the attack outside of Sanctuary, where Boba forgets he has a jetpack, Black Chrysanthemum attacking, and the blowing up of Sanctuary, and killing the Tuskens. Those are your 4 basic attacks, and the Tusken one it's at the pass, so that isn't really the Pike Syndicate, even though it was. So it just feels like they really needed to spend a little more time on that part of the story, building up the threat from the Spice Runners from the Pike Gang, that it became necessary for Boba to get rid of them, or showing the effect of the spice on the people of Mos Espa. That would have been helpful. But so that's where I think they may have dropped the ball. But I think the character growth for Boba was actually very good. We see a different Boba. We see him growing and trying to become something more than a bounty hunter. So, all right, I'm going to take a quick break there. We're at the halfway point of the episode. We will be back in just a moment to finish talking about the Book of Boba Fett. Be right back.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about the season finale of the Book of Boba Fett. But before we get back into that, let me remind you that after today's show, we have What's in the Box with Miss Jen. And we also have, do we have Space Cadets tonight, Kyle or JD?
I believe we do.
So What's in the Box with Miss Jen, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. That goes for 2 hours, I believe. And then Space Cadets with Jenna and the crew over at Space Cadets. And then Kicking It with Henri should be.
Correct.
All right. So I'm learning this.
Especially when I forget to put the schedule in your chat. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah. See, I figured being the first guy on the Experience every day, or on most days, made it easy. I just go, okay, I'm out of here, gotta go. But I really do need to tell you about the rest of the lineup. So, yeah. So stick around for What's in the Box. It's a fun show if you haven't watched it. Miss Jen takes a random box out of their warehouse and opens it up and just sells what's ever in the box, which is great if it's a box of comics or a box of toys. One of these days, she's going to pull out a box and it's like it's office supplies, or it's going to be personal stuff that she brought in from home and forgot about, and that's going to be a fun show. I'm just waiting for that one. All right. Also, keep in mind we have some dates now for what's coming up. Disney Plus wise, if you haven't watched it, they, along with dropping the Book of Boba Fett finale, they dropped Assembled, which is the behind the scenes. That's Marvel's behind the scenes show, and it's an hour-long special on Hawkeye. So you can see a lot of the filming of Hawkeye, how they did things. They talk about bringing Vincent D'Onofrio back in, how that happened, and I always love watching the shows, because it always amazes me how much these big decisions, somebody came up with the idea to bring back Vincent D'Onofrio. Well, it's not somebody, it's Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige is more hands-on with all of these things than you could imagine. He's the one that got Civil War to happen. He had the Russo brothers were in a room trying to figure out what to do next after Winter Soldier. And Feige had suggested to one of the producers on the show that they should do Civil War. And the guy's like, no, we can't do Civil War. We haven't earned that yet. We haven't got to that yet. And he kind of poo-pooed it. And Kevin Feige went, okay. And then a little while later, they're having this big meeting with the Russo brothers and all the production staff and stuff. And Feige poked his head in and said, hey, we should do Civil War. I got to go. And by the end of that day, they were doing Civil War. And that's Kevin Feige. And Kevin Feige is the one that said, we should get Vincent D'Onofrio. He's the one that, said, yes, we should make it Kingpin. the guy is the uber nerd when it comes to the superhero stuff, and he's probably the best person for the job that he's got. And I think I'm thankful for him every day because he's putting out some great stuff. I mean, you can nitpick the hell out of certain Marvel projects, but overall, it's still the best show in town, you know? So, and it's what Star Wars is trying to do, and it's what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are trying to do with The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and the upcoming Ahsoka Tano series. But we're finally going to get something outside of that. We're going to get the Obi-Wan series. Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to debut on May 25th. Now, I heard some grumbling like, why won't they have it on May 4th? May 4th is Star Wars Day. May 4th is Star Wars Day because the fans have picked that because it's a pun. May 4th, May the 4th. May 25th is the day that A New Hope debuted, that the original Star Wars movie came out. So, and that's where we meet Ben Kenobi for the first time. So releasing it on the same day, the anniversary of that seems like a really good idea for me. So May 25th, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We get Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan. We get Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. There's reports that Rupert Friend is going to be in there as a Sith Inquisitor. It should be a pretty interesting show. And there's also a lot of people. There's some people who are complaining that Star Wars has a Tatooine problem. That basically they keep going back to Tatooine, and that's exactly what they're going to do with the Kenobi series. But we know he was on Tatooine for the entire time. You know, keeping an eye on Luke during this period. So they kind of need to have a Tatooine. And then we also know that's where Boba Fett was. So yes, they have this problem where they keep going back to Tatooine, but a lot of stuff happened on Tatooine. So, but that debuts May 25th. We got Moon Knight debuting on March 30th. And there is talk that Miss Marvel will debut shortly after Kenobi. So we're going to have gaps still, which I don't understand why, because they're doing so many of these shows. You know, you got the Cassian Andor series. They've already greenlit it for a second season and hasn't even come out yet. They've got the She-Hulk series, the Miss Marvel series. These things should be maybe a week apart so we could do stuff like Assembled or Legends, or if they want to have that break week. But Disney Plus should be rolling these things out so that fans of Star Wars and Marvel never let the thing lapse. There's going to be 6 weeks or more. I think it's 6 weeks, maybe 7, until Moon Knight. That means that most people could go, I'm not going to pay for March. I'll sign back up on April 1st. I'll watch Moon Knight then. Or I'll sign back up in April, catch the episodes, and go forward there. But I'm going to save $10 in March by not buying it for that month. Now, most of us are lazy, and we're not going to do that. But it is possible. JD says, I kind of like the idea that all these galaxy-changing events happen on a backwater, nowhere world. Yes. If there's a shiny center of the universe, this is the planet farthest from. I do. I like that too. And, you know, I mean, there's so many Dune references here that basically it's Arrakis. You know, the spice flow, the crate dragons. I mean, it's just Dune. This is an easier to get into version of Dune. So there's a term for, is it hard case sci-fi? Where it's real in-depth sci-fi. and that's Dune. And Star Wars is more of the light, fluffy sci-fi. It's a Western in space. And now a Godfather story in space. But then again, Jabba the Hutt was supposed to be Marlon Brando. So, or is their version of Marlon Brando. All right, so let's look at the episode itself. Almost gave me a heart attack there. I wasn't expecting to have the spoiler roll. The writing on this episode has been really odd, or this series, because, like I said, the early episodes were really slow, and we spent a lot of time in flashbacks to the point where it was almost like Arrow. You know how Arrow always had the flashback story in every episode? That was what was going on here. And we get there for 4 episodes. And then when we come out of it, and we're like, okay, now we're really going to, we got 3 episodes to go. We're really going to build up the story with the Pike Syndicate and the whole Godfather thing they're trying to do. This is going to be great. And then we go and spend an amazing episode, but with Din Djarin. We have an entire A-Team style montage of him building the spaceship with Pelimoto. We have him visiting the armorer, which we hadn't seen since season 1 of the show. And we find out all this stuff about the Darksaber and training, and it's just really, oh, and we get Carson Tevye back. I mean, there's some really great stuff, but it didn't really serve the overall story other than to put Mando on the planet at the time they needed him. And you could have condensed that down quite a bit. You didn't have to go and do all of that. That could have been episode 1 of season 3 of Mandalorian. Then we get to the next episode. And again, we get all of this stuff with Grogu's training and Luke and Ahsoka Tano and just this, a lot of time basically reliving the Yoda scene in Empire Strikes Back with, was it Empire? Yeah, where they're training and going through and running and jumping, and to the point where Luke is doing the same jumps with a different version of Yoda on his back. So it seems very weird to me that we took that much of a divergence in a series called Book of Boba Fett. Where we went was awesome. And that's the thing, is that this show is a collection of awesome moments that when you sit back and just enjoy the moments, it's great. But when you sit there and try to, the connective tissue that is supposed to put it together into a story, it's not that strong. It's kind of all over the place. There's a lot of things that don't make sense, a lot of characters that we didn't necessarily need. I mean, they all turn up in the end. Oh, and okay, I was actually going to bring up this point. JD says that's his complaint about Clone Wars too. And in a way, that's what this season was almost a Clone Wars season, because they'll do a couple episodes over here with Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and then suddenly we're with Padme and Jar Jar Binks on a planet, and then we're over here with Yoda and the 501st, and then we're back over here with Cad Bane sneaking in to steal a holocron, and they were kind of all over the place. It felt more like an anthology series in a lot of ways, the Clone Wars did, that just had that, had a narrative, but it was a very subdued narrative. And that's kind of what this was, is that we got that the first 4 episodes spent so much time with Boba Fett's past that it really didn't set up the big showdown that we were going for in the modern day. Then we spend two episodes completely away from it. I mean, the mayor's major domo had more lines and screen time in those 2 episodes than Boba Fett did. Boba Fett didn't speak for 2 episodes. He was on screen for 10 seconds. It's just odd. Like I said, it's a collection of amazing moments, and the finale is the same. It is so many great moments, but when you sit there and stop and go, let me get this straight. You have a handful of soldiers and you spread them out around the city, but you don't put them, so that they can see if the pike come, but you put them out in the open. You don't put them like hiding on a rooftop with a sniper rifle or hidden in a cafe or where they're not so obvious. You have Chrysanthemum standing in the middle of the Trandoshan. First thing, why are you putting the guy that hates Trandoshans in the Trandoshan district? You put the Gamorreans by the travel area near a cliff. Why were they standing by a cliff in the open? And then the whole thing with the mods just standing all. Why weren't the mods spread out, hiding, watching areas? That's what they would be good for, because they're not good for much else. And you keep your big guns with you. You keep Chrysanthemum and the Gamorreans with you. You let the mods spread out and be your eyes. But so tactically, that made no sense. I know, but did they have to stand? JD says the Gamorreans were watching the starport, which is on the cliff of the crater, I believe. You could still put your back against a building. So they spread them out like that, and then they're stunned. Stunned, I say, when it turns out the families all turn against him. Well, of course they did. They're bad guys. And as Din Djarin said, it was the smart move for them, because Boba had no backup. The only backup they tried to get were the people of Freetown, which wasn't that many people. So if Boba had all this money, why wasn't he bringing in bounty hunters that he knew, or contacting other Tusken tribes, or any of that stuff? They killed off his tribe, but he still has the ability to communicate with them. Din Djarin has the ability to communicate with them. Why didn't they come in? Why didn't they go get Tuskens? Why didn't they? There's so many questions. And that's when you sit back and start looking at the show and go, well, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Boba flies off to get his Rancor. Why didn't he get his ship instead? The one with the big guns and the bombs. Because I'm pretty sure that would be a little more accurate at killing than the giant monster who tore up half of Mos Espa defending it. I loved seeing Boba Fett on a Rancor. I loved the King Kong homage of him climbing the building. All of that stuff was awesome, but it doesn't make sense in the story. So much of it didn't make sense in the story. It was like they sat down and made a wish list of things that they wanted, and they just pushed them all together and tried to write a quick story around it. And sometimes it worked, but that finale, I don't know who wrote the finale. I'm afraid to look. And even the directing, some of the directing moments were a little strange. Like when the two mods are trying to help Chrysanthemum to his feet while they're being chased by the droid things, and then the pikes are running in and they have to turn and shoot. One of the mod guys does a spin and then fires. Why did he spin? Anybody? Wasn't throwing a baseball. Didn't need a windup. He says, I got it. I know the issue. I have now, it's missing competence. Watching Cad in Clone Wars, he's evil, but he's incredibly at what he does. Boba just didn't make smart decisions. And Boba didn't make smart decisions. And I think the problem is that this isn't what Boba does. Boba's a bounty hunter, not a leader of armies. He's not a tactician. You know, just because you're good at sneaking into a place or coming up with a plan to capture somebody doesn't mean you're good at holding off a syndicate that has big tank droids with armor or with force fields. Doesn't mean you're good at that. And you know what? That's fine. Boba doesn't have to be good at that. He needs to get somebody who's good at it. He really needs to get somebody who's good at that. But, you know, and Fennec's an assassin. Also not in her foray. It's not her specialty to for fortifying places. Neither one of them, that's their specialty. Just like neither one of them is big in running a city. But this gave us a lot of really neat moments. And if you're just a Star Wars fan and can sit back and try to push the story hiccups aside, to see Boba on a Rancor, to see Mando and Boba flying together on their jetpacks and just coming out, shooting the hell out of stuff. Seeing the Major Domo having to tell the Pike that Boba was offering nothing. Little Strangers in Candy, Strangers with Candy reunion with Peli and the Major Domo, because they were both on that show. Grogu coming back to Mando and using his new leaping ability to leap into Mando's arms. I mean, that was cute as hell, wasn't it? Or Mando, or the Grogu soothing the Rancor and then just kind of laying next to it and going to sleep. That was great. The action scenes were fun. You know, the big fight, Boba using his knee rockets. It looks like Mando has those too, but I don't think he's ever used them. But yeah, you get a lot of great moments like that. You know, everybody gets their moment to shine. Black Chrysanthemum, just a beast, an absolute beast. You know, and they get the Godfather homages, like somebody come up and giving him fruit. That's straight out of The Godfather. There's just a lot of fun little moments like that in the episode. It's just the connective tissues that tie all these moments of the series together are very weak. And I don't know why they're weak. Because the writing on Mandalorian has been spectacular. You know, I know of one episode that people complain about, and that was in season 2, the Frog Lady episode. Other than that, everybody loves it. And I hear people going, oh, Robert Rodriguez should never be able to direct an episode of Star Wars again. Really? Because I thought we all loved the one he did of Mandalorian, which showed Boba being a badass. You know? And I love the fact that the fight with Cad Bane came down to Boba using his gaffy stick to win. That shows how much he changed. That he's not the young boy that Cad trained. He's now something more. Like I said, there are some great moments in this show. The connective tissue, though, is weak. and the overall story is weak. And I don't know why it's weak and how they thought breaking away for 2 episodes was going to be a good move. But they could have re-edited it, stretched out the flashbacks and stuff over 6 episodes, mixed in the Mando stuff and the Cobb Vanth stuff, and set more of the Pike stuff up early, and then got to the finale. I think it would have been more cohesive. So I think it just comes down to how they told the story was a little odd. But when you look at the individual components, it's all the stuff we wanted to see. We got the showdown with Cad Bane. We got Boba on the Rancor. We have Grogu's back with Mando. Pelimoto may have a new boyfriend. We got all the things we wanted to see. At least most people. Yes, I know that one guy didn't get his ending with de-aged Han Solo bringing Ben to Luke. And I know that some people wanted Boba Fett to be a hardcore killer. But the character is going in a different direction. So that's my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett. I think overall, I liked it. I enjoyed it, but it does have issues. So, all right, guys, stick around next for What's in the Box, comic book sales show with Miss Jen. Then there's Space Cadets, a pop culture talk show with Jenna and the crew from Space Cadets. And, of course, our late night show tonight, Kicking It with Omri, where you get to kick it with Omri. I will be back next week where we'll talk about the latest episode of Peacemaker that dropped last night. That was crazy. And we'll talk more Vox Machina. And we'll come up with something else now that Book of Boba Fett's done. So we'll have 3 shows next week. Just don't know what they'll all be. So have a great weekend. Remember Pop Go the Writers on Saturday or Sunday, depending on which channel you watch it on. And, we'll have Death on the Nile to talk about next week, too. So see you next week. Have a good one.